This is the Be the Solution podcast, and I'm your host, Maria Quattrone. And today I have the privilege of interviewing Cesar R. Espino. And Cesar's journey began with a challenging upbringing in Mexico City to becoming a beacon of empowerment and inspiration. It's truly remarkable. Born into poverty and raised by a single mother in a 200 square foot home lacking basic amenities, Cesar's early life was marked by hardship. Despite these obstacles, he started working at a young age, driven by necessity and resilience. This foundation of perseverance propelled him to achieve a master's degree in business administration, excel in corporate America, author of the best-selling book, You Can Overcome Anything, even when the world says no, and succeed as a real estate investor. Today, Cesar is not just a successful professional, but also a devoted father and grandfather dedicated to offering programs that empower, educate, and inspire individuals to transform their lives regardless of their background. His work spans real estate, investing, mentoring, business consulting, and self development, making opportunities accessible to all. Welcome, Cesar.
Hey Maria, how are you? Thank you for having me here. Excited to be on your podcast show. So thank you for the invitation.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm excited to talk with you today, Cesar, about, well, I'd like to start with, your story.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll give you a little bit of it. I always tell people that really my beginning really started when the day that I was born. And what I mean by that, I came to the States at the age of 10, except it really wasn't, that was definitely a pivotal moment for me. Nevertheless, the biggest challenge, I think, were the first 10 years of my life. And, you've heard that thing where they say, you are what you learn the first 7 years of your life, right? Whatever might be going on during that time. And
Right.
to begin with, don't know my biological father, don't even know his name. I don't have no clue anything on that. So I was born into just one parent, my mom. I grew up with my mom, my mom's mom, my grandmother, and my older brother. And it wasn't until the age of 4 years, I had just turned 4 years, 3 months after I turned 4 years, that my mom decided to take her leap of faith. And her leap of faith was leaving us behind and her migrating to the States, just like many families do, to be able to give us for her to give us a better life, right? Except that was huge for me because the minute that she left, besides going, a lot of things were going on through my head as a kid. You don't, as a kid, you don't understand, and sometimes you don't see why parents do certain things, right? And so sometimes you tend to blame yourself for, well, what happened? Do they not love me? Do they how come they don't want to be with me? All these things were going through my head, and at the same time, now I recognize the sacrifice that my mom made. Nevertheless, when she left, it forced me. It wasn't, and it wasn't an option, and that's why I say it forced me to start working at an early age. And so it was my grandmother, who I call my mom, my grandmother, my older brother, and I, and we were working. And some of the things that we did, we had to make bread, cookies, taquitos, a bunch of different things that we made at home, and then take them to a flea market and sell that at the flea market to see if we can make some money, right? Even that wasn't enough for us to have enough money. And so at one point, my grandmother decided to get us a sewing machine for each one of us. And so I started sewing clothing at an early age, just to be able to make ends meet. So if anybody's looking for a Halloween custom, I'm sure I can make it for you for this year, because I know how to sew clothing, right? And so we did that. And then there was times that we didn't have nothing to eat. All we had is what I consider to be the Mexican specialty dish, because even to this day, I love eating that. And it was really a tortilla with a grain of salt, and that's all we had for days in and days out, because that was the reality. That was the reality. We didn't have any other option. And I was not a kid, as growing up as a kid, I didn't have the luxury to be able to go out and play with some of the other kids from the neighborhood. Literally, I went to school. I'm glad that my grandmother was very strict on us going to school and actually getting that education, even though we didn't have anything and we were poor. She wanted us to go to school, so we would go to school right after school, I had to be home to start working. And I remember one time, and I never forget this. I remember one time I said, no, I'm going to go play with my friends. And so I went out and play soccer. Mexico, they play a lot of soccer. And so I went out and played soccer. And my grandma came out fuming, mad, came out of the house with a belt and literally got me back into the house. And obviously gave me a whooping and said, you got to get to work. And while obviously that might seem harsh, I realized it though. I recognized that I didn't have the luxury. Definitely the fact that I took time away from working or doing something to play, it was at that moment was not the right solution or was the right answer. And I get it now. I definitely don't condone anybody to be working at an early age. That's just my reality. And I think the person that I am right now is because who I was before. And so that's where my story starts. And it wasn't until the age of 10 when I migrated illegally to the States. That's when my mom finally had the money enough to be able to pay for the three of us to come to the States. And that was a whole new story that I can definitely share with you. But yeah, that was the beginning for sure for me.
That must have been really difficult.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely was. It was a transition, and not growing, not knowing your biological father, not having your mom, and working and living in those conditions was not something easy at all.
And so a lot of times that holds people back, but it didn't hold you back at all. It actually helped you, and it created the person that you are today. So you've written many books now.
I have,
And
yes,
starting with the launch of You Can Overcome Anything.
yeah.
And what did you have to get through from, so there's many other things that occurred, but what did you have to do to get to getting to be able to write that book?
Yeah, more than anything, and as you mentioned, there were so many different things that went on in my life. And I'll share one more thing before I answer that question. When I came to the States, I came here with the idea of, this might be a better place. And then I kind of got discouraged very easily and very fast for a couple of reasons. Number one, not being able to speak the language, not being able to have any friends that I can, play with or even talk to, the discrimination or being bullied because I couldn't understand things. I really quickly took away the desire of being here. And I remember one time telling my stepdad, who I see as my dad, I said, I don't belong here. Send me back to Mexico. This is not my place. Even though I was already reunited with my mom, and then obviously, I guess now I had a father figure. I didn't want to be here because there were so many different things that just didn't, they were not falling into place. And in that moment, I'm glad he didn't send me back. Otherwise, we would have been having this conversation, right? Except thinking about it, there was something that we as people go through even now in life, and we got to be able to understand that. And I see it now. For me, when I told my stepdad, send me back, I don't belong here. The reason why I asked for that is because I was uncomfortable being in this great nation, in this great place. And knowing that I was working and not being a kid, and I was poor, like literally didn't have anything, I was comfortable living that life. Many times and oftentimes we have this fear of the unknown. And because we have the fear of the unknown, we want to stay comfortable and not be uncomfortable. And so this was for me a lesson to learn, is that no, it was my time to shine, and I needed to be uncomfortable. And so I surrendered not to give up. I surrendered to understand. I surrendered to see things from a different perspective, a different point of view. And when I decided to do that is when I started getting into the idea of, this is my new norm. Let me learn the language so that I'm not minority in essence. Let me be able to communicate better. Let me be able to do that. So within 2 years, I was able to learn the language, and I became as we call it here, a schoolboy in middle school. I was getting straight A's, even being is someone that had just learned the language, and I was doing good, and I had very advanced classes. I was into a lot of community service with school and things like that. And then at the age of 15, going into 16, I had my daughter. So just being here, think about that. I was literally a kid having a kid. Just 5-6 years after I came from Mexico, I had my daughter's mom pregnant, and here I'm having a kid. And I made a promise to my daughter when she was born. I was 16, and I told my daughter's mom, I said, I promise you that our daughter is not gonna have to suffer or work the way I had to work as a kid. And so to answer your question in the long way is she became my motivation. She became now that purpose of being able to do that. Oftentimes we have to figure out what is that bigger purpose for you, because sometimes we as people don't want to do things for ourselves. We have to see, is it our parents, is it our significant other, is it our kids? Something has to be that point of ability to push you to go that extra mile. So that was the first thing. The second thing is, what have made me do and go through a lot of things that I have going on right now is that I started believing in myself. I started believing that even me as a kid that didn't have anything, that was poor, that came from, an unprivileged place, and not knowing my father to this moment, is that believing that even that person can have a better future, and believing that even if it takes me twice or three times or four times more than anybody else, in my mind, I see you can do that. So it's believing in yourself and having that purpose, and realizing that sometimes we have to surrender to understand and take a pivotal moment, a switch. And more than anything, understand that life, for you to grow, you have to be uncomfortable to continue to see different things that are in your pathway.
Yeah, it's interesting, that whole idea of being uncomfortable. It's the only way that you can grow into the person that you want to be and the person that you could be.
Right.
And so often than not, we all want to, it's just like the day when it's really cold out and rainy and there's a storm and everybody just wants to stay in bed and put the covers over their head because it's comfortable.
Right.
Right. But the more that we can put ourselves into uncomfortable situations, in your case, you didn't have a choice.
Right.
Right. Well, people today will do things like cold water, plunges and things
Yeah.
that would take them to be so uncomfortable to get stronger mentally, physically, emotionally. But you weren't given that choice. So you had to work through that, or you didn't, but you chose to work through it. You had, and having your daughter, I guess, was a pivotal point in creating that. You had the desire, you had the confidence, and then that led to taking action. It's
Yeah.
like those are the three things, right? We need to have the
Yep.
desire,
Yep.
we need to have the confidence, and
And
then
taking
we
action.
need to take the action on it.
Right. And you said something too that's important. And you said that, well, I didn't have, it was not up to me, right? And it was out of my control. Obviously, again, my parents could just say, hey, you know what, fine, we're gonna send you back because you're a trouble child. Because I was a trouble child the first year that I came here. I was getting into fights in school. I just didn't want to be here. And I had this resentment against my mom, believing that she had left me, again, without understanding, right? And so I was a trouble child. And so they could have sent me back. Again, that was out of my control. Except, again, there's a lot of things that we don't control. We cannot control the weather. We cannot control the politics. We cannot control a lot of things that are happening. Like recently, the COVID. I mean, you can do whatever you want. You cannot control it. It is part of what we have to deal with. Except the second thing you mentioned is, though, we have a choice. And so I do believe that the decisions and the choices that we make today will determine the quality of life that we have tomorrow. And so while we have that choice, we got to be able to say, okay, well, if this is out of my control, what are the things that I can do? What choices can I make now to start shifting little by little? And if that choice that I made was a wrong choice, then we have the ability to pivot. The challenge is that many people are afraid of making that choice. People are afraid of, living that toxic relationship because they're so comfortable. They might be getting bitten physically or emotionally, right? Or mentally. Yet again, they're comfortable and they're afraid of making that choice. Or it happened to me when I left my corporate job. I wanted to do something more for my life. I was comfortable in a over six-figure paying job and benefits and traveling and all this stuff. I was very comfortable with that. Except deep down, I wanted to do something different. So I had the choice to leave my job, and I froze. I went and I was going to give my 2 weeks notice. And it took me 7 months to actually do that 2 week notice because I didn't make the choice that first instance that I had it. And so again, that is a big thing. It's a huge thing. Except again, just because you don't have control over things, you do have control of the choices that you make. And we have to really intentionally do calculated risk, and we have to make those decisions that are going to affect the quality of life that we're planning to have tomorrow.
Yeah. In fact, the only thing that we can control is the controllables, and the only controllables that we have control over is ourself and the way that we respond to the things that happen around us. That's
Yeah.
the only control that we actually have, because we
Right.
can't control what anybody does as much as we would love to control other people. And we can't be in their head, and we can't, as much as we want to shake them and say, wake up, we can't. We can just do things to propel us forward
Right.
so that we have the strength to handle whatever it is that's, going to be in front of us.
Yeah, no, that definitely. And it reminds me of, at least through my journey now and going through all the things that I'm doing right now, it reminds me of what Les Brown said. And he said, it is it is lonely on the top because the bottom is overcrowded. It's overcrowded, right? And oftentimes, again, while we cannot control certain things, we want to be with the mass. We want to be with the majority of the people and just kind of becoming a follower. And one of the things that I want to challenge people is become a leader. And not necessarily because you're leading people, become a leader in leading your own life to where you want it to go. Do not be a follower. Definitely be a student of life. Learn from people. Learn from experiences. Learn from maybe people that are advising you. Except don't be a follower. Be a leader in your own life. And sometimes that journey, because you start doing things that perhaps you were not used to doing, and or the group of people that you're hanging around with may not see eye and eye, and they tend to fall off. That journey can become a bit lonely. Except again, it's your journey. You're still asleep by yourself, even if you have a significant other. When you close your eyes, you're in your head by yourself, right? And so you got to be able to understand that, and you got to be able to accept that and just keep moving forward.
Yeah. You said something about followers, and a lot of people down that don't have or don't want or can't be the leader in their life. So here's something I'll point to. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So I wanted to watch a movie on Netflix last night.
Mm-hmm.
So I Googled top 10 movies on Netflix. All right. So globally, there's this movie called Players on Netflix. And I looked at the top 10 movies, and they were kind of all ridiculous, like Minions and Despicable Me. And I'm like, who watches this garbage?
Yeah.
Right. So my husband and I watched the movie Players, and it's about these young 20-ish some year old girl and three guys, and then another girl comes on, and they literally are playing people at the bar to win like a one night stand or not even romantic love, like a one night stand. And I'm thinking to myself, is this really what like the world watches this nonsense? Like this is the number one
Globally,
Netflix
right?
movie globally, and in the top 10 in the States. And it was like a light bulb went off saying, wow, and then I saw another thing on Facebook about, you'll see a lot of, I say it like this, but weak people, there's a lot of people together, right? There's always a lot of them all together.
Mm-hmm.
But the strong people and the people that want to continue to succeed in their life, they're usually by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's not as many. There's people, so you have to make sure you find yourself in that right room. And I use this analogy all the time with my team. I said, did you ever hear a story about the crabs in the bucket? And people are like, I'll say at different times and different people. And they're like, no. I'm like, does a crab ever get out of the bucket? And they're looking at me, and I'm like, no, they're in the bucket. I go, yeah, because all the other crabs pull the crab down the crab that wants to get out of the bucket.
Yeah.
It's like life.
Yeah.
People like to give you their misery loves comfort.
Yeah.
I'll put it as basic as that.
Yeah. It's true.
Putting ourselves in, gosh, it's Sunday afternoon. I could be doing a lot of things. I'm sure you could too. You're on the West Coast. I'm sure you could be doing a lot of things right now other than, giving back, being in contribution to be on the Be the Solution podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's tons of things that I could be doing right now other than this as well. However, I believe that my belief is that, we are all individually the solution for our lives. And if we can affect and help one person through this that gets it and wakes up, then we did our job today.
Yeah, I 100%. 100%. And I love that you mentioned that, because again, we have to find out what is that purpose. I have this thing called, I call it my highest intention. And for me, my highest intention is it revolves around three different things, right? The first one is that I want to be able to inspire people. Second one, I want to be able to motivate. And the last one, I want to be able to empower people, right? And it's through this, I love the title of your show, be the solution, because at the end of the day, all of us, we are the solution for ourselves and for somebody else. We have to be able to do that. And so if I can, again, say something, it might be a word or a phrase, or just something simple that resonated with you deeply, that can help you make a change in your life, then I done something good. And for me, that's something huge. Even coming back from, again, going back to my humble beginnings, and not having that support, not having the ability to listen to things like this, to podcasts like this, not having that, you know, I can see why a lot of people get, left behind. And I think that while right now we're in this era of social media and all these different ways that we can communicate, why don't we utilize social media for a greater purpose, like this, and deliver a message that can really help us, right? And so I definitely agree with you. We all can be doing something different, except, again, what is your long-term vision and purpose in life? And I think that once you follow that, things start falling into place little by little.
They do. You have to get clarity first.
Right, right.
And you know what? You could have clarity and then years could go by and, there's a new mission. Maybe that mission and vision changes.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? Because you were in a business before this business you're in today. So what you wanted changed. I was in advertising sales for 11 years before being a real estate broker for almost coming up very quick, shortly, another couple weeks on 20 years. And
Nice.
so, we get to choose. That's like the beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, there's the idea of, we as people, historically, every 10 years, right? People tend to reinvent themselves, whether it's in the same industry and then to try to level up to a different level, or they might lose interest on something and then they want to get into something different, right? And you can kind of see that every 10 years. That's kind of like the trend, or the statistics. Again, the biggest thing is, as you're talking about it, is time can go by super fast. And so while we might have the desire, if there's no action and we're not taking any type of action in any of the things that we want to do, it's never going to happen. And so when I did, like, I'll give you an example. When I did my very first book, and on top of that too, we get discouraged very easily, especially now with social media, with friends, with family. I mean, even family, sometimes family are the most critical ones to give you negative advice, or not so welcome advice. I remember when I did my first book, I had a different challenge. It wasn't really nobody telling me that I couldn't do it. It was somebody even more crucial to my life telling me that I couldn't do it. And it was myself. I remember had this idea of, like, what if if I do, you can overcome anything, even when the world says no. And the idea was, let me tell my story. Let me talk about, the minute that I was born up until the point that I wrote the book, and kind of, go through that journey. And the reason why I call it even when the world says no is because I felt that I got knocked out so many times by society, being born to just one parent, not having anything, not having food, coming to the States illegally, going through that, being bullied, not having the language, having a kid at 16, 10 people telling me you're not going to be nothing. Like, I constantly was getting knocked down by the world, by people. And I said, let me write this book, because I feel like by me writing this book, I know I can leave a message for somebody that maybe they're not going through the same things that I'm going through, except they can probably see some of my own experiences within their life that can help them move forward. And I had the idea, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna write it. And then shortly after that, within a week, I was gonna start writing, and then I pretty much talk myself out of it. And we do that a lot with a new business, going after that man or female that you want, and asking them out, maybe taking a leap of faith and leaving this job to go another job. Like, we tend to talk ourselves out of doing that, right? And I started talking myself out of it by saying, hey, Caesar, who do you think you are? You're not a writer. Like, literally, this is a conversation I'm having with myself. Like, Caesar, you're not a writer. Heck, you don't even like to read. The last time you read something is in high school, and that's because you had to for your English class. Like, who are you kidding? No one's gonna want to buy your book. And I literally talked myself out of doing it because of those things that I said to myself. It wasn't about maybe a month or two later, I went to a another networking event, self development, and I got a little bit more clarity. Okay, and I got some motivation, and I was inspired. And I said, you know what? Screw this. What if? What if I change my mindset or the way that I see things? And so this is the other thing that I want to leave you guys with, is that sometimes when you're not clear on something, or you feel like you're talking yourself out of it, change that lens, okay, and look at it from a different perspective, and start thinking about it from a different point of view. And so I did. I said, you know what? So what if nobody buys my book? So what if I don't know how to write, or I'm not a writer? What if, though, I do this for me as a self accomplishment? What if I do this so that I can leave a legacy or a book for my daughter when I'm gone, so they can see the story that her dad went through? What if I just do that for those couple of different reasons? And so when I change the reason behind it, and I saw it from a different perspective, and my motivation was different. I wasn't even thinking about the how many books am I gonna sell. The whole motive of this was way different. I started writing immediately, and then within 3 months, I finished my book. And before I knew it, again, I have had a different purpose. I was getting messages from people that I didn't even know on social media, saying, "Hey, I got your copy. I got a copy of your book. You've changed my life. Because of you, I got inspired to start writing my own book." I mean, it was like people that I'm like, wow, right? And so again, a lot of times we have to start seeing things from a different perspective and find a different motive to write or do whatever you want to do. The second thing is that I've learned through this too is, don't do things for profits, do it for purpose. While the money is good, and we all are really searching, and we're going after that shiny object, that money is good. It solves most challenges. I said, don't let that be the only motivation. If you're doing things for profits, you're doing it wrong. You have to do things for purpose, and the profits will come. Because the minute that you're only doing it for the money, yeah, it might look good. Before you know it, you're gonna drown. You're gonna end up, crashing. Do it for a purpose, and I can guarantee you the money's gonna come.
So good. When we follow our hearts, right? We have to
Yes.
open up our heart to be able to follow our heart. And opening up our hearts starts to give us a lot of clarity in what we want, who we want to be. And the beauty is that you get to write your own story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a matter of fact, this is like writing a book right now, right? I mean, our life is a book it's a book in itself. We're writing, every month, every year, it's a new chapter, right? And how do you want your chapter to be? What do you want next month to be? If you were to look at 2024, that's the name of the book, and every month is a chapter, right? And every week is a paragraph. How do you want that life or that book to look? Are you gonna write a chapter of month May? Let's let that be. Let's just say that's a chapter. I'm gonna get into drugs, or I'm gonna start doing things that don't serve me, and I'm gonna be hanging around with people. No, you wouldn't write that. And so start looking at it from that perspective, and start creating something for your life that you can look back and say, you know what, wow, that was huge. Or you can look back and say, you know what, I can share this chapter this year with my family, my kids, as an example, so they can follow me, right?
So somebody said to me yesterday, They said, think about when you get a call for that meeting, and the meeting is with the person that you could have been. You want to take that meeting. And so, are you doing everything to be the best version of yourself? And at the end of your life, if you found out that you could have been this other version of yourself, it's too late.
Yeah.
So, taking the risk, taking the chance, regardless of whatever the outcome is, just putting it out there like you did. So you decided to write the book for yourself and not for anybody else. And so sometimes we have to bring it down to just that.
Yeah.
Because, I was at church today, Mass. I'm Catholic. And, I was praying. I always pray for everybody. Always praying for family and whoever needs prayers. And then I recognized, I said, I am going to pray for myself.
Yeah.
I was feeling like a little heavy today. There's a lot of things going on in the family. So I had I felt like this heaviness. I physically felt it. And that's not a good feeling, and something you brought up earlier, social media, right? Social media is a highlight reel. It's full of shit. Right?
It is.
It's like crap. And so I do my best to stay off of it as much as I can, except for when I'm posting. A lot of my videos and stuff get posted by my, assistants, whatever. But I do my best to stay off of it, because if you just sat on there all day, it would be, I think some people would jump off a roof, because we all have problems. We all have family stuff. Maybe right now you don't, but at some point everybody does. And it could be a year, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be way too long. But we get the choice of how we're going to respond to it, and, who is it that we want to be. And so you've actually written many books. And so I like to ask you, so you did the first one, and what happened?
Yeah. So again, I think when you're in your purpose, right, opportunities come. And for me, again, as a result of writing that first book, and again, it was just that book, and I changed the way of the reason why I did it. Except, I started getting a lot of great feedback, and it so happened that somehow this person got a hold of my book, and they had a book series called How to Be Authentic. And they say, hey, we saw your book, love for you to participate in this book series and write a chapter in our book. So that led to that opportunity to essentially, I had already been interviewing a couple of different podcasts, nothing major, to a couple more interviews, right? So it just went from something that, again, I did it for me, and gave me the opportunity to be in other podcasts, be interviewed. And then on top of that, I was asked to be on this volume. And so I participated on this volume, on this book, gave them a one chapter on that book. And it was just a ripple effect, more things came off of that. And shortly after that, maybe, about a couple of months later, I said, let me do a podcast. And so I started doing a podcast called You Can Overcome Anything Podcast Show. And it was the idea of also bringing people from all walks of life, and just very similar to your show, just to be able to talk about these things that do matter, and be able to get people to that next level, right? And give them some good ideas. And then I said, well, what about if I take the same concept now and create a book series called You Can Overcome Anything? And so I started creating this book series of You Can Overcome Anything. And to this day, we're on we're starting volume 13. I had over 100 people go through the book, all over from Nigeria to Canada to Australia to Mexico to El Salvador, all over the place, right? Just contributing to that. and those books, that book series, it has been a bestseller in Canada, Australia, US, and Mexico. And again, it was back to that idea of my highest intention. How can I motivate? How can I inspire? How can I empower people? Not just here in the US, in multiple different places. And that was a vehicle for me to be able to do that through the book writing. And again, through that, I've gotten a lot of opportunities to, again, being on podcasts, get on stage and talk about my story and be able to speak into people's lives. And so you just never know. I think that once you get more clarity and you're doing things from the heart, things just happen to fall into place. If I would have, I believe that if I would have stayed with the idea of, let me just write this because I want to have sales and I want to be able to do this, I honestly do believe that I wouldn't be able to have taken that idea to the point that I've taken it now. I was right before we got into this, we are talking about, I was at a real estate event this past week, right? And one of those things that I did while I was working that real estate event, I also decided to partner up with the main guy that hosted that real estate event, where he's doing a charity for a charity called the Dream Machine, right? So he's really helping kids that are either sick or a lot of things that are going on. And so what I did, and this was really just last minute, there was about 40 people that were there for real estate. And I went on stage, I spoke about my story a little bit, and I said, you know what? Normally, this is the price point, because I also help people write their own books too now. I said, here's the price point if you want to join my book series. Here's the price point if you want to write your own chapter, your own book, and I'll help you with all of that, from PR to book cover to formatting to doing a bestseller campaign, like all the whole 9 yards. I'll work with you in terms of that. I said, anyone that decides to buy this, though, I'm going to donate 100% of the sales to this charity. Again, the purpose of that, and the fact that I think everybody should write a book, combine both of those things, we were able to raise about $20,000, and they pay for that. And all of this money is going to this charity that I'm going to be part of in about 2 weeks here in Los Angeles, where there's going to be a big party of all the people that put money towards this charity. So again, you find a different purpose, you find a different motive. I think things fall into place.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Great, great way to give back, especially to something like that's near and dear to your heart, right? I think that's that's really important.
It is. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I believe, we got to do more of that. And that's where I'm talking about, you're right. There's a lot of bullshit nonsense in social media, a lot of stupidity taking place. What about if we start using that for a bigger, greater purpose? Because you can reach more people. I mean, that's probably the good thing about social media, is that you can reach more people. Except, again, the majority of the people that are there are just, they're just, for BS crap.
Yeah, well, there's depending on which channel you're on, right?
Yeah,
So
right. For sure.
some of them are, LinkedIn's a little bit more business oriented, and
right. Yeah,
definitely, it's definitely a better place to be than probably, TikTok or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to use all of them.
Yeah, no, I get you. For sure.
Yeah. So how do people get involved with writing a book? I mean, that's something I personally was actually going to do in the past, and then I got deer in the headlights and dropped it.
No, definitely. I think the first thing is, is I believe everybody should write either a chapter on a series or their own book. And again, it's more for what is that the reason, what is the motive, right? What is the purpose, and again, I believe one of them is that self-accomplishment. That's a huge accomplishment. It's like, think about when you got out of high school, or when you got your first car, you were like so excited, right? We as human beings enjoy that. We want to have more of that. So we really got to think about, the reason behind it. What is that purpose? What are you trying to do with it? The second thing is, I believe that, it doesn't matter if you're a real estate agent, a investor, a coach, anything that any kind of profession. you should have a book, because it's instantly going to give you more credibility. It's going to give you more than what you are now.
I
If
build
you're just
authority.
yeah, yeah. If you're just working a 9 to 5, you better believe it is going to give you credibility in your workplace. I'm like, oh my god, you're working here and you have a book. Like, believe me, there's more credibility by just having a book, or being part of a book, or being a published author. I There's different ways that you can do that. Definitely, I myself help people through two different ways. Number one, if you want to be part of my bestseller book series, you can definitely do a chapter. Or if you said, hey, I want to be able to do my own book, I can also help you with that. And people can find out more about it if they're interested, just by going to www.cesarrespino.com, or you could find me on pretty much every social media under Cesar R. Espino.
That's amazing. I
Yes.
love it. Your journey is very, very inspiring. And you have such like a great personality and very I could tell, because I just recently met you, so
Yeah.
I could tell
Yes.
you're a very kind-hearted person, and that is exudes. Like it just, makes me smile.
Thank you. I appreciate
Like,
it. Definitely.
yeah, it makes me smile. It's been great talking with you today. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the privilege to interview you today, Cesar. And I
Yeah.
wish
No,
you,
definitely.
yeah, and I'm going to have you back on later in the year to hear about where you are. And I'd love to keep in touch with you about the charity and
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
what transpires with that.
Yeah.
But everybody can find you on Caesar at CesarRespino.com. And I loved sharing the time with you today. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Maria. Really appreciate it. And I'll leave you guys with one last thing. And I'm not good at relationships, except my only and best advice on relationships is make sure that you don't cheat on your future with your past, because oftentimes we get hung up on the past. So that's my best relationship advice. Don't cheat on your future with your past. And thank you again for having me on your show.
Thank you.